Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here, the founder of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're caring about living in a conscious world, creating a world where love prevails. These are all things that I am just deeply committed to, and I know you are as well. I am just so happy and grateful to bring to the Conscious Living Podcast today a dear friend and colleague of mine who I've had just the amazing opportunity to work with very closely over the past year and to get to know on a personal and professional level, and someone who I really deeply admire. Kristen, you can send me money for that comment.
Absolutely.
At any point. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. That's your cue. So Kristen Howe is an amazing both theater and film actress, and also the founder of Go Big Coaching, and she's a professional coach. So two very interesting and divergent careers that she is crushing it in both domains. So Kristen, I know you and I share this passion for awakening, for creating a conscious world. And I'm just so glad to bring you to the show today. So you have the opportunity to share with people your thoughts on creating a more conscious world. So welcome to the show.
I'm so psyched to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love it. So do you mind just saying a little bit more about yourself? Maybe if people haven't seen you on the screen or in theaters, if people haven't heard of you yet, say a little bit more about yourself and your path to coming to this highly conscious place.
Sure. And I try to be in a highly conscious place, but it's
Do your
not
best.
perfect by any means. It's one of those things where you're like, listen, more often than not, I always make that my mantra. Just try to be more often
than not. Exactly right.
Yeah. So, wasn't always in this place. I always felt drawn to the fact that there was more than just the seemingly, the physical results that you get from working hard and all of that. But went through like really pushing myself hard and being miserable and burning out and all. And then it was like, well, okay, if I'm not also going to be happy, I'm not understanding the point. And yet I don't, like within me, I felt like you can't have to trade it off. Like there's got to be a way to do both. So I started looking for people that were doing both. And I was like, oh, there are people that are happy and successful. So that must be possible. And then, certain things happened. Like there's a book that leapt out of a bookshelf at me. And, I had very low lows. I've talked to you about this before where, I was in Manhattan and was drinking water out of a faucet because I couldn't afford a glass and living off mayonnaise sandwiches and stale bread. So certainly I've had my low lows and my higher highs. And so it became this quest to find some balance within that, knowing, okay, sure, ebb and flow is normal and ups and downs are normal. But I was like, the ups and downs were severe. And finding that through line of happiness within me so that no matter what was going on, at least I knew that was there. That was my anchor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of us come on this path of starting to want to understand more about living consciously, is going through some of those difficult, painful times. And for me, I know, and it sounds like you have a similar thing. At some point, I recognized the common denominator here is me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm the one. And then I had I'm the one that's kind of causing and creating this. And and then I had to start asking hard questions. What is it about me that I'm creating these relational patterns? Or what is it about me that I keep ending up flat broke? Or, what is it about me that I believe that I can't amount to anything, or that I have to work really hard like you? You got to work really hard to make it, in this world. And And it is that journey that kind of turns you within. And that is often the early path of awakening. A friend of mine wrote a book, Michael Meerdad, he wrote a book called You're Not Going Crazy, You're Just Waking Up.
Yeah.
And I love that notion, that at the beginning of it, it doesn't look and feel so good. So what are some of the things that you did that kind of aided your process toward conscious living, Kristen?
Yeah, and it actually speaks to some of what you were just saying too. I think the first thing really is taking that responsibility of, I'm the common denominator in my life. I am the only constant in my life. Like if this life is a science experiment, I am the constant and everything else is a variable. The challenge is in our society, taking responsibility means who's to blame. And so I think it's that jump from what responsibility means in terms of responsibility equaling blame, which it does not, to realizing actually, if you take responsibility, it's not about beating yourself up. It's not about blaming yourself. It actually gives you the power to change things. If you don't take any responsibility, you're just living at the whim of whatever happens around you. And so that was the first big shift for me, was to realize, oh, this isn't about blaming me. So this is about having the power to change. If I created this, I could create that.
Right? Yeah. So I was going to ask you, how do you distinguish the difference between responsibility and blame?
Blame is an interesting, I don't have a lot of time for blame. I have time for, listen, you know what? If I did something, said something where I'm like, ooh, not what I meant, or I see that it makes someone feel badly, or I am all for owning it.
Yep.
And saying, you know what, that was not my intention, or even, oh, you know what, that in that moment, in that argument, I said that painful thing and it was my intention in the moment and I just hate that happened, but I'm so sorry, right? So taking the ownership, but not then berating myself and shaming myself. And it doesn't make me a bad person, it makes me a person. I mean, sure, if you end up with this massive pattern of hurting other people, okay, there's stuff to look at. But for the most part, most of us, we're actually trying to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
And in those moments when the best that we can, or the best, I like to always say that sometimes people aren't doing the best that they can because I believe in massive potential. Sometimes they're just doing the best that they know how.
Yeah. Well, I say doing the best they can according to their current and evolving capacity.
Exactly. There is more potential. Sometimes you're just doing, and you're doing what feels right. And sometimes you're doing what feels right. And then it's like, oh, whoops, that had the total opposite effect. And so I'm all for the ownership of those moments, but and true ownership of it, and the coming clean and the being sorry and all of that. But then not putting your value as a person on it, not shaming yourself, not keeping yourself in this place of, see, this is what's wrong with you. It's like, no, you're human. This is what happens. And because until you move from that place of shame and active blame, where you're just reliving it and punishing yourself, and so therefore you're not going to move. Nothing's going to budge. And it's I think at the end of the day, if you can look at it and go, you know what, today I did do the best that I could. I threw, not looking for excuses of, well, because of this, and this. I'm not looking for excuses to act poorly. That is not what I'm talking about. But, it's looking at it and going, I'm going to nail some things and they're going to be amazing, and I'm going to miss on some other things. And so I need to make adjustments and have ownership.
Yeah. I think of it in terms of what level of consciousness you're living in. Living in kind of the lower vibration consciousness, blame is it's the lens that you see through, whether it's yourself or other people. And I think
it's because that's what we're taught at such an early age. You don't want to be the one to blame. So,
if it's what we're taught or if it's in fact human nature. Because look at toddlers. They will very quickly point the finger like, no, Johnny did it. No, Susie did it.
Sure. I mean, but I think I think when you're born, you're probably not ready to point a finger of blame. Okay. It's not until you know there might be a negative repercussion, which is the removal of love, which is the removal of acceptance, right?
Criticism, being critical.
We learn that quickly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So maybe it's already imprinted
Sure.
in toddlers from a very early age. So, and if you don't grow beyond that kind of young education that you got about blame, you stay stuck in that blaming pattern, which you won't grow in consciousness if you can't shift from blame to responsibility. It's not my fault, but it is up to me to make it different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even there are certain things where it's like, well, yeah, okay, that I screwed that up. That's on me. It doesn't make you a lesser person. It makes you a person. Sometimes we screw things up. And so this whole having to dodge ever having screwed anything up reality that most people are trying to let, either it makes you start to lie to others and yourself, start to internally blame yourself for absolutely everything, or just stop trying and engaging because there's going to be things that you screw up, right? And so it's redefining failure. That's a lot of what I work with. Not failure, it's that didn't work out how I expected. What are the adjustments I can make?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So talk about that a little bit more. Redefining failure sounds like a very conscious process.
Well, it is. Here's the thing. Up until the age of 7, where our brains are in a different state that is a far more receptive, far more hypnotic state. So we're just accepting stuff in. After that, we need to shift. And the way we learn something new, the way we implement something new is through repetition. I'm an actor. It's through rehearsal, right? And every rehearsal doesn't go great. And there are some rehearsals where you're like, man, that, boy, I wasn't getting it that day. But you shift from unconscious creation to conscious creation. And, I talk about it being most people don't. Most people are living unconsciously by default, right? But becoming the conscious observer of your thoughts, of your awareness, of what you're giving your energy, your attention, your awareness to, because when we shift, so often what happens is something happens outside of us and we dive in. If it's good, we feel great. If it's not good, we feel horrible, right? We're on this crazy ride. And when we can shift to not fully going down the rabbit hole and, oh, hold on, that's happening right now. I'm doing that thing. I'm diving in how I do. That's when we become the conscious observer. That's when we can start to make a different choice, but we still have to practice the choice. People say to me all the time, okay, so how do I get it where I'm perfect at it? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm
great.
I don't know. It takes choice. And sometimes you're going to catch yourself right before you jump into the habitual response. Sometimes you're going to catch yourself 3 months into it. Wherever you catch yourself, and that's great. And then it's shifting from the habitual, then I berate myself for it. That's where we get stuck. That's our inner resistance going, I'm going to keep you stuck here.
And that's what creates patterns, right?
Yeah, exactly. And instead going, okay, I see that this is my pattern. It still feels crappy. I don't feel great right now, but I see that it's my pattern and I don't need to dive down the rabbit hole in just the same way. And when you do that, you've actually done a pattern interrupt just by noticing it, by becoming the conscious, observer.
Right. I mean, that is the definition of conscious living, I would say, the ability to step back and observe how you're thinking and feeling and responding, to step back and observe your behaviors, and then choose.
And then make a different choice. And what will help you is if you, from now on, go into life with the agreement with yourself that I'm gonna choose not to judge myself. You're still gonna do it every once in a while, but again, that's another one. You catch yourself doing it, become conscious, conscious observer, and also if you can pre-arm yourself. Look, we all have the same 3 to 5 patterns that we cycle through.
Like through, yeah.
Right?
What would you hold on? What would you say they are? Those 3 to 5 patterns?
Oh no, each of us is different, but we each have our own. Like,
give me an example.
Okay, every once in a while, probably 3 times a year, I will suddenly wake up. Normally, it's after things have been going really well in my business, and I will out of nowhere wake up and I'll be like, oh my God, another dollar is never gonna flow into my business. There's no reason for it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But that's a pattern. That's a thing that happens. And so when I finally was able to start to become aware of, oh, this is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Like a lot of actors, suddenly they'll be in rehearsal and they're feeling great. And then their pattern might be that, I don't know, probably about the 7th, 8th day. Some of them, it's the 2nd day. Some of them, it's the 1st day. They're like, everybody else is doing so great. And I'm doing so, like every actor you talk to, gonna have that, right? Yeah. We all have our things.
Yeah.
And so when you can identify them, so like my thing that I was just talking about, the like, oh my God. And then you can decide, okay, when that happens, I'm going to acknowledge it's happening. I'm not going to try to convince myself out of it. That just ends in a like inner wrestling match. But I'm going to own it. I'm going to be like, this is what it is. And then if you pre-decide what you're going to choose to put your energy, attention, and awareness on at that moment, if you decide ahead of time, as opposed to when it happens.
Yeah. You're less.
Then you're equipped.
Yeah.
Then you go, oh, right. I decided that instead I was just going to go take a walk. Yep. Whatever it is. I was going to do something that's just for me. I was going to drive to the beach. I was going to write that sort of thing. And then you can get to the point. It doesn't mean that the pattern, it still happens to me. But now I'm able to, what used to sort of be there then, because I dived down that rabbit hole for a week, 2 weeks, a month. Now it's literally like a day or an afternoon where I'll come out and I'll be like, just so you know, and now it's funny. It still feels bad, but it's funny where I'll be like, just so you know, this is that day. Everybody's leaving. All the money's drying.
Right.
I'm going to go on a walk. Right. So it's like, right. So if you can pre-decide just something that you'll give your attention to, that is the conscious choosing. That is conscious living.
I love that. So some of the things you decide to do are go to the beach, go for a walk, not like immediately changing your inner dialogue, but almost changing your physical set in the moment.
Yeah, I respond very much with physical stuff. Some people don't. But because the worst thing for me to do is when I feel that way, I jump into, even though there's not actually a problem, that's the part that is important to realize. I don't know that this has ever happened to me when there was actually something that needs to be solved, right? When there's actually something that needs to be solved, I'm in that mode, I'm handling it. Sure. It's normally coming out of, and who knows where it came from. I'm sure, the other shoe's going to drop. I don't even know if the first shoe dropped, but that's fine. Whatever it is,
right?
That it happens. And so what I used to do is I would dive into all of this problem solving for a problem that actually didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now I'm giving all of this energy, all of this attention, all of this awareness to the thing that is to what I don't want to create.
That's what anxiety does, right?
So then you're like breathing into it. And you're like, so the best thing for me is not to then sit down and be like, hey, I'm going to do some work, because what would I do? Okay, maybe I can create a coaching program. I'm going to do something that's not actually going to help. It's just going to waste my time, waste my energy, make it all more difficult.
Yeah. Because of where it's coming from. You're coming from that anxious, limited space.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. Wow, I love that. I love that notion of like, just get up and do something different, observe it. And one of the things I like to remind myself too, Kristen, when I'm in that space of, whatever my spirals are, is to remind myself that my thoughts aren't true. We all, how many thoughts do we have a day? Somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day.
And 70% of them are repeating.
70% of them are repeating and in the lower consciousness realm.
Yeah.
Anxious.
They're typically repeating negative thoughts.
Repeating negative thoughts, right? You're such a loser. What's the matter with you? Why can't you do better? You should do better. Look at them. They're doing better. Comparison, judgment, negativity. Exactly right. So when I catch myself in that space of having some judgmental towards self or others, repetitive negative space, I just remind myself, your thoughts aren't true. They're habitual neurological patterns that have been entrenched in your brain. And you can get off that train at any point that you want to get off that train. You can actually switch tracks. Instead of being on that track, you can go on this track over here.
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly what the sort of pre-choosing or even choosing, because, if you're looking at like manifestation and all of that, the universe isn't like, this is how she feels about money. It's literally all about your vibration, all about where you're at. So it's not topic specific. So the best thing you can do is shift your vibration. And the best way to do that is by shifting what you're paying attention to, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so I'm going to go sing instead, because you know what? I don't have questions about that. Now, on a day when maybe I'm like, oh, my voice feels really weird and I'm starting to judge that. Well, then, okay, great. I'm going to go write a webinar right? Like, it's choosing to focus where the energy feels good, and taking action there is going to raise the energy everywhere.
Absolutely. So I want to go a little bit deeper for people maybe who are newer to this notion of conscious living. You said it's all about your vibration. So you have to do something to raise or to shift your vibration. Tell our listeners and me, what do you mean by that? Because that's right. Just go to someone who's not in this conversation all the time. That's
so
what are you talking about?
Because people are like, what the magical woo stuff are you talking? Have you ever walked into a party or walked into a room and been like, ooh, I want not that person? Where you just feel it?
Yeah. I don't dig their
vibration.
Yeah. We even right? We use that language. You're like, I don't know what it's about.